Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 presented by Stakes. Today we are talking about a couple of basketball games on Wednesday night in the SEC. Mississippi State going to Georgia, Missouri going to Texas A&M. If you're wondering, hey, Alabama travels to Arkansas, we've broken that one down in a separate video. Blake, though, let's start with Mississippi State. This one, I'm looking at computers. We don't have a line as we're doing this on Tuesday morning, but I'm looking. I think you've got the computers I look at: Ken Pomeroy, Bart Torvik, BPI, and Jeff Sagarin. You've got Bart Torvik has got Georgia about a 1.4 point favorite. The other three computers have got Mississippi State about a 1 to 2 point favorite. That averages out is State about a 0.6 point favorite on the road. You average the probabilities between Pomeroy, Torvik, BPI. They've got it split down the middle at 50%. Georgia has played much better of late. It almost snuck a win at Florida the other night. And State is a tremendous defensive team, but it's also a team with some offensive deficiencies. It won a rock fight with Ole Miss at home, 64-54. State is tough to score on, but this one also in Athens, which I think makes it a little bit more interesting.
Well, I mean, let's call it what it is. This is easily the most unpredictable slate of conference games we've had in a single night thus far, because I think all of these games are probably a point or two at most in terms of, and like I said, we're not talking about the spreads, but if you look at the computer numbers and such, that's about where it's at. So with all three of these games, Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Mississippi State, Missouri A&M. So that is worth noting here. And we are doing these in a separate one because these are, I mean, they're not to the level of Alabama, Arkansas in terms of maybe where both teams are at, but these are still very fascinating in their own right. Yeah, this is a man. This is the coin flip game of the night, perhaps, when you look at these two, because the problem still, I think, is we just don't know with Mississippi State. Eh,
Are
they
there
played
enough
Alabama.
points?
Well, they played Alabama and Tennessee as two of their three SEC games, right? And I mean, take anybody in the SEC that that has done that, and it's just a hard. I mean, Ole Miss has done it too, right? It's just like it's a hard thing to gauge because those are the two best teams in the league, and one result was much closer than the other. Mississippi State, unfortunately, the one on the road was not pretty, and now you come into a road game here against Georgia, who I say coming off a game against Florida that, quite frankly, I think Georgia probably a little disappointed because they got off to a good start, but couldn't close, the deal there, and now come back home where Georgia's been good at home. That they beat Auburn the last time out, right? So matchup wise, like you said, I mean, we know with Mississippi State offensively, there's not a whole lot to go off of. I mean, what would you say? The best thing Mississippi State does offensively is get offensive rebounds. That's probably their strength.
Smith.
And, they do have a little bit of a size advantage in this game, perhaps. And so that's important. But like we said, if this is a close game, it's hard not to look at that glaring number of 62% free throw shooting from Mississippi State. We've talked about it. I mean, Alabama, they go 18 to 36 from the line. What was it? Yeah, Ole Miss, they went 13 to 26. Like, these are the kind of, I mean, that's what worries you, I think, of Mississippi State, is you just don't know offensively what they're going to do. And I'm not saying Georgia's an elite defensive team, but they're better than they were. Yeah, this is a tough game to talk through because it's just, you look at both of these teams, and I think we had Mississippi State ranked higher in our power rankings, but I mean, this is
Georgia's played really well lately.
Yeah, Georgia's done a lot of good things, like we said. Even the loss to Florida, I think you could look at that and feel like that was more about Florida than it was Georgia. And I think, this game being played in Athens, two teams that probably are going to have to rely on their defense quite a bit. Obviously, Mississippi State statistically is the better defensive team, but this is, this to me, this is a lower scoring game that is really all dependent on if Mississippi State can do anything with any consistency on offense, because we just haven't seen that a lot this season. And if they can, I mean, I just think Georgia probably finds a way to win this one.
I want to bring two things up quickly before we move on to the next one. A lot of winning on the road is staying out of foul trouble. Mississippi State, according to Ken Pomeroy, is 353rd, and that's in a good way, of two-foul participation. That's 1.9%. That's incredible. So if you're worried about foul trouble, State's done a pretty good job of staying out of it, although not a ton of road games for the Bulldogs so far. Just 2 true road games? So maybe that's not quite the right number to look at because the whistle tends to tilt towards the court.
And 2 teams on the complete opposite end of Tennessee and Minnesota, as we said. Minnesota is just terrible.
Right.
And so it's just, it's hard to write, like, what's the middle ground there between those 2 games. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, where they've played, State has done a good job of staying out of foul trouble. But the other thing, and again, I like what Mike White has done for Georgia. I feel like Terry Roberts takes too many shots for my taste at times. I think he took 22 last game. He's a dynamic point guard. He gets in the lane. He's bigger. He makes stuff happen. He's been good for them. They're a better team with him, but they've got Cario Aquindo. They've got Braylon Bridges. They've got other guys who can score, and I would like to see that number of shots for Roberts go down a little bit because I think Georgia's got some other kids who can put it in the basket too. And so I would like – I mean, he needs to be the driver of that engine, but maybe a little less so.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe. Because, I mean, I still look at a game like, the Auburn game, and I'm thinking, he kind of put him on his back and, kind of willed him to a win there. And but, getting to the free throw line was an important part of that too, I think. And so I mean, maybe there's something to that because, like you said, I mean, there are other options, but this is one where we talked about this before at some point this season. Georgia's getting more, and it ties into what you're saying, but like they're getting more out of some of these other guys are starting to step up and really give them a lot of good minutes and be able to kind of produce, not just scoring wise, but in some other areas. And that's giving them more depth. And quite honestly, I think we thought they had coming into the season. We didn't know what the rotation would look like because there were a lot of new guys. You kind of knew, Kundo was going to be there. You knew Braylon Bridges was going to play. But with all the new guys, it was just kind of a matter of, like with a lot of other teams, figuring out what their rotation and role was going to be. But now that we see it, I mean, they're getting some quality minutes out of, some of these other guys. Now, I'm not saying they're 10 deep or anything, even if they play 10 guys, but it's just kind of they're getting some good things. And I feel like this is the kind of game where that's important because here's the deal. Like, I just don't trust Mississippi State offensively. Not saying I fully trust Georgia offensively, right? But it's
trust
like
them more.
Anytime Mississippi State plays on the road, you could probably just repeat everything that we're saying.
Yeah.
Because I think that's going to be the thing is you just don't know what you're going to get from them anywhere. But especially when they go on the road in this league, to trust them offensively, I think is a hard thing to do. And so maybe Georgia probably won't be at its best offensively either, just because of how good Mississippi State is on the defensive side of the floor. But I think in that kind of game, I trust the home team more here. And I feel like it's almost like we were ready to give Mississippi State all the credit. And then they went on that 3-game losing streak, which, outside of one of those games, nobody's going to disregard, 2 losses to Alabama and Tennessee. But the way they lost to Tennessee, I just think the shooting stuff that we kind of hinted at coming into the season, we're really starting to see that on display against a better schedule. And yeah, I would probably lean Georgia here, but this is your coin flip game of the evening, I think.
Yeah, Georgia's about a half-point favorite according to those 4 computers. Yeah. Or excuse me, Mississippi State is. So it's almost a toss-up. I'm with you. I'll take Georgia. Okay, the other one, again, we talked about Alabama, Arkansas in a separate video. Texas A&M, which has suddenly gotten, I don't know if hot's the right word, but is winning. host Missouri, which comes off a win over Vanderbilt that was closer than it probably should have been. A&M, surprisingly, between the four computers is about a 2.7-point favorite. A lot of that's BPI, which does not like Missouri at all, has got A&M winning this by 7. The Aggies about 59% favorites to win, according to Ken Pomeroy, Torvik, BPI. No line on this one. I've noticed this before. A&M is doing that thing that it's done in past years under Buzz Williams, in which it's out of conference isn't necessarily impressive. A lot of times it doesn't play teams, but they start winning when the page flips to January. Although last year we noted A&M had a lot of trouble. It had an 8-game losing streak. But what I'm getting at is it feels like A&M is starting to round more towards the form that we felt it would have coming into the year.
Yeah, as we said, don't be surprised if A&M, you look up and they're 4 or 5-0 in the SEC just based on their schedule. This is the biggest one, I think, to get to that point, because after this, they got South Carolina and Florida. I think they, as of right now, I'd pick them to win both those games. So don't be shocked. I mean, it's just, yeah, it sets up nicely for them. And they're playing better. You can't deny that. I mean, it's like we said, winning on the road in this league has been tough no matter who it is. They've got one of those road wins, one of those 4 to this point. They beat Florida in Gainesville. And they're doing some things well. I mean, what's the biggest thing they're doing well? They're getting the free throw line, second in the country in free throw attempts per
Offensive
game.
rebounding.
Well, that too. They're averaging 26 free throws a game, and that's number 2 nationally behind High Point at number 1. Which, Chris, you could say High Point is the high point of free throw attempts nationally.
Could be. You might say that.
You could say that. But they're they're so good in that area, and I think this is one. I mean, what have we said, right? Like Missouri still will have some moments where they slip a little bit defensively. And, is A&M this overwhelming offensive team that is going to beat you just by coming down and, doing this or that? No. But will they beat you by getting an offensive rebound here or there? Which, Chris, what's one of the worst things Missouri does?
Well, Missouri is
they're bad on the boards.
They're the worst Power 5 team in the country at offensive rebounding. I'm looking at Ken Palm. Here are the teams that are worse than Missouri at giving up offensive boards. Winthrop, Northwestern State, Nicholls State, Florida A&M, USC Upstate, Morgan State, Merrimack. Not exactly a who's who of college basketball.
Yeah. And we said coming in defensive rebounding, I feel like that was what we talked about with Missouri coming into the season. As we started to see those first couple games play out, we said these are going to be some big problem areas. And it's worked at times. It's looked a lot better. But, again, I think that's more of – I don't think Missouri is this bad in those areas necessarily. But I think it's more closer to a team that is average or below average in those areas than it is just a happenstance. So, yeah.
Well, we said sometimes that's in tandem with something else. What's Missouri looking to do, Blake, offensively? It's looking to get out and run and get quick buckets. And so some of that may be strategic.
Yeah.
But it is hurting. And let me see what A&M is in tempo. A&M is 201. Okay, I thought A&M might play a little slower, but if A&M can control that aspect of it, I would think that a slower game obviously would favor the Aggies too.
Well, and look, 2 teams that turn each other, they're going to force some turnovers. That's kind of the big part of their defense. Like you said, that's a big part of Missouri's. What's helped their offensive numbers too, I'm sure, is just being able to force a lot of turnovers and get out and get more easier opportunities on the offensive side of the floor. And so I think that's, a big part of it. And we've said with Missouri, they take care of the ball, right? And A&M is a team that will, they lean on trying to force teams to turn the ball over. And that's a big part of this game for Missouri is being able to do that. And, A&M, a good team. When you look at some of the numbers, right? 2-point percentage defense, A&M pretty good. Meanwhile, Missouri's top 5 nationally in that. And, I think a lot of that, as we said, is a combination of getting some turnovers, getting some easy baskets. Kobe Brown, has been really good. Missouri has a lot of guys who can attack, and so. But I mean, Missouri's been pretty balanced in terms of they can shoot the three, they can, as
Yeah.
we said, get easy buckets in transition. They take care of the ball. Um, so like, don't let the offensive numbers like feel like there's some kind of they are what they are for a reason, and I think it's there's a lot of things that they can do well. So, oh man, this is I said the
Well,
other
let
one was
me
a
throw
coin
one
flip.
more thing at you. A&M's defense is not quite what I thought it would be. They're 95th in adjusted defensive efficiency.
Yeah,
I think we would have.
they're not what they were last year. That's for sure. Yeah,
No, my point is, I think we would have. This is not a lock it down defensive team like we thought it could be coming into the year.
yeah, it's interesting. Buzz really hasn't had outside of last year's team, which more so came on down the stretch. He hasn't really had those.
Yeah.
Just I think that was our expectation was you're going to see a lot of just top 10, 15 defensive teams with him. Hasn't really happened a lot at all. Outside, like I said, last year was their best statistically defensive season. So yeah, I mean, this is I mean, what do we do? Do we just go with the home team again? Like, I feel like it's
I'm going home. A&M just feels like look, we love Missouri. We love what Dennis Gates is doing there. Love the way they play. They're so much fun to watch. But I thought you could see cracks a little bit I mean, going to Arkansas and losing, that's no shame, but um I thought Missouri should have put some more distance between itself and Vanderbilt. And again, A&M is doing that sneaky thing that it does. It's a 4-game winning streak. Granted, none of the teams that it beat are probably going to the NCAA tournament unless LSU perhaps does. But one at Florida, which is not easy. And in their building, given their history and given the way Buzz gets it together this time of the year, I just feel in my gut this looks like an A&M win to me.
yeah, it's gonna be funny because there's gonna be a lot of Missouri fans who've not watched my Dennis Gates love over the past however many months. They're gonna come in and say, "Man, this guy picks against Missouri every time, doesn't he? This guy hates Missouri." Is this? But I think I'm kind of
You're
with you. We,
sandbagging your client is what you're doing.
I'm trying to keep people off the bandwagon. I'm just I need a little room for the bandwagon before we get to March. So um I'm trying to kick a few more people off for now. But yeah, I mean, look, it goes back to the home stuff we talked about, the numbers in the SEC, the stats. I think when you have one of these kind of games, I I feel like I was half joking a couple weeks ago when I said don't be surprised if A&M's 5-0 in the league. I really think there's a good chance A&M could be 5-0 in the league. And so, I'll give them a 50.1% chance to win this one. And, I think, like you said, that what the issue with Missouri for me is the, what we saw against Arkansas got off to a great start. That's Arkansas. I don't think A&M's to Arkansas's level, but you saw some of those things defensively kind of backpedal a little bit against Vanderbilt. Going on the road, not exactly playing a high-powered offensive team, but a team that is capable enough, like we said, to attack them both on the glass and just in getting to the free throw line. I think that combination is not ideal, and so yeah, I think that's probably the way to go here. But again, this is statistically, if you look at the computers, right, this is the most unpredictable night of SEC conference play thus far, based on all of these games being being favored by what a point or so at most, and in a lot of these kind of computer models. So yeah, it's going to be a wild one. So
Yeah, and we're here for that after a first week where
yeah, I
the
was gonna say,
matchups were pretty lopsided and you
yeah,
knew ahead of time who was going to win most of those.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we will talk about how it goes on Wednesday night. On Thursday morning on our channel, we'll have a Thursday night live stream for SEC Hoops. We're starting those. We're doing a Monday night one just for football now. So those are some changes with the channel. The best way to know about that is to hit that subscribe button. If you do that and hit the like button, that helps us. Anyway, we're going to preview every single SEC game involving conference teams. And then when we get to postseason, we'll do that too from here on out. Thanks for watching Southeastern 14. He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We'll see you soon.